in the making. I decided to make this interview. Today I'm super excited because I interview Barbara J. Hunt, the author of Forgiveness Made Easy. I'm a secular person, a non-religious non-believer, and I always thought that forgiveness is a religious topic, but now I consider it as one of the most critical life skill of let go of the past and always stay in the present moment. And as you will see in this interview, it doesn't require any religious background. So I tried this process from Barbara, and I've been using a method just like this for more than a decade, and I feel very, very happy that finally I found it. So I felt I need to share it with you. So I decided to reach out and to her and ask to interview her. It will be a short interview, and you can gain or learn one of the most important life skill. Thank you, Barbara, for coming.
Thank you, Zoltan. Thank you.
Yes. So I read your book and it's fantastic, and I collected a few questions about forgiveness, and I would like to go through them. Um, Most of my listeners and tribe is a kind of a secular business person, and I think forgiveness is one of the most important skill also in so all my questions are regarding forgiveness. So do you need to subscribe to any religious belief or spiritual beliefs to make forgiveness work?
No, absolutely not at all. It's a secular ethics practice, which means it's something to do with our morality and how we interact with other people and how we interact with our pasts, because it's our relationship with what happens to us
Mhm.
that determines our level of happiness in the world. And so being
Yes.
able to forgive it's like an internal maneuver. I sometimes think of it like internal yoga. They're moves that you need to be able to make, and they can be quite challenging because we're being
Mhm.
required to do things that are unfamiliar to us.
Yes. What is forgiveness exactly? Can you give us a short definition?
Yes, I can. In fact, I use a very specific definition in my book,
Mhm.
which is from one of my teachers, K. Bradford Brown. And his definition of forgiveness is it is the absolute refusal to hold ill will against someone for what they did or didn't do. And I'll just say it again, just because it's quite a lot in one sentence.
Mhm.
Forgiveness is the absolute refusal to hold ill will against someone for what they did or didn't do. And I can just break it down because there's a few parts to it which are really important. One is,
Mhm.
excuse me, that it's the absolute refusal. So it's a bit like being pregnant. You either are or you're not, or you haven't taken the test yet. So it's an absolute choice that you make, and you
Mhm.
make it for you, regardless of what the other person, whether they've apologized, whether they're
Yes.
repenting, whether you've litigated and they've gone to jail. It doesn't really depend on what the other person does or doesn't do. Like I said, it's an internal something that you do for yourself. And then
Yes.
the other,
And
the
this is
other,
the thing.
go on.
Sorry, just go ahead. So this is the thing I really liked in your book, that it's an internal thing and it doesn't require anything on the other side. So it doesn't require apologize from the other or anything like this. Just go on.
Exactly. And it means that you can choose to let go of the ill will. So the absolute
Mhm, mhm.
refusal to hold on to it
Yes.
is your choice, and it sets you free. So the point of it is that you get set free, and it also means that you can forgive or let go of things from the past. You can let go of you don't even have to forgive a person. You can forgive an illness, for example, or you can forgive helicopters, or you can forgive the government. It means that you can anything where you are bifurcating, where you divide from where reality is something that's happened, and how you want things to be. The minute you want them to be different from the way they are, then there's some kind of pain and there's some kind of division,
Hmm.
which is where the resentment or the ill will, because you could even call ill will, I call it ill will, but I call it grudges, grievances, resentment. And it's any of those little things that build up where we're point
I see.
scoring.
Yes, this is my third question. Is that many people believe that you have to forgive a big crime against you. Can you also forgive and let go of small things?
Yes, definitely. And it's better actually if you let go of the little things, if you can, as a practice. And that's why I like calling it a secular ethics practice, because it's
Mhm,
something that you can choose to do. You can
mhm.
choose to not carry your ill will forward. And
Yes.
especially in our business relationships or in our relationships
Mhm,
with our
mhm.
close family and friends, I think
Yes.
of it a bit like little twigs falling into the river, and eventually the twigs kind of, they build up into a big dam. That's how beavers make dams, because it's the little things that build up. So if we can do our forgiveness on the little things,
Mhm.
then they don't build up into long held grievances.
Yes, I really especially like in your book when you say if you live in a relationship, for example, it means constant forgiving to the other person.
Yeah.
Uh, so my next question is: many believe forgiveness is not learnable. You are either born with it, uh, or you don't have it if you are unlucky. And can someone learn how to forgive?
Yes, definitely. Although I, excuse me, I do think that there's some people who are more inclined
Mhm,
towards forgiveness and other
mhm,
people who are less inclined,
mhm,
but everyone can learn it. And I sometimes think of it like steps where you may be at a different stage on, like if you imagine it a stairway or a ladder going up to forgiveness, and the bottom is I'm never going to forgive them for that. Then the
mhm,
next rung up is I know I need to forgive them for that because
mhm,
I'm holding on to something that I want to let go of.
mhm.
I want to forgive them, but I don't know how to.
Ah, yes.
I'm willing to forgive them, and and then I can, and then I do. So sometimes if you're very angry or something has just recently happened,
Mhm,
you really need to feel your anger and your pain about it before you can get to forgiveness. And I went to a talk fairly recently by, well, not, before COVID,
mhm,
about the neuroscience of the brain.
mhm. Yes.
And we are the part of the brain that helps us to forgive.
Mhm,
If you're feeling very angry, it's not really online, so it's like you have to let yourself feel your anger and notice what needs to be done differently, because it may be that you might need to litigate, or you might need to end a relationship, or you might need to write a
mhm,
really strong email or resign from
mhm,
your
mhm.
work. There may be some action that needs to happen. And also, you need to do your forgiveness. So that means that you set yourself free of
Yes.
the internal baggage.
Yes, and you don't keep any ill will towards the past and past events. I really like this, and probably the situation which you described describes me. I wanted to forgive, but I didn't know how. Can someone forgive at will? So, if is forgiveness a choice?
Yes, definitely. Forgiveness, I mean, you never have to forgive. You can go to your grave holding on to all your grudges and grievances if you want. It's I think the thing about resentment, there's two things. One is we don't like to admit that we carry resentment, because it's not very attractive. We never say, "Oh, I bear grudges for a really long time" on our dating profiles. It's not something that we think is an attractive quality. But
Definitely.
but also we know when people are resentful. We can feel it. There's something subtle that's very it feels uncomfortable when somebody's talking about how they resent their parents or a brother or a sister or something. So but of course you're completely free to to take your resentment to your grave if you want. There's a really good saying about, you may have heard this, and I say this in the book, that resentment is like setting yourself on fire and hoping the
Yes.
smoke will bother the other person, or
Yes.
because it's really, it's like, it doesn't matter how hard you hold your resentment and how much your jaw is gritted and your fists are tight, the other person is just going around doing whatever they do
Yes, absolutely.
regardless.
And he or she doesn't care
Yeah,
really
they
much
don't
about
they
this.
don't care.
So it's your responsibility to forgive and let go of the past, and doesn't don't hold any ill will.
Yeah.
So what are the benefits of forgiving? You mentioned many in your book. Can you
Yes.
list examples?
Yeah, well, in fact, right now, one of the best things that you can do to boost your immune system is your
Mhm,
forgiveness. Because
mhm,
when we carry resentment, we're carrying extra cortisol, we're carrying stress. When we carry resentment, we get more triggered. You know, when somebody says something, if you're
mhm,
already resenting them and you've already got a really big buildup of twigs in the river, when they throw another one in, you're going to feel that even more. Whereas if you've done your forgiveness work, it means that the field is a bit clearer and you don't get so triggered. And I'll give an example, because I sometimes get really annoyed with the helicopters that fly over my house. And
mhm.
I have done my forgiveness work on the helicopters, and whenever I do it,
Hmm,
I don't get as disturbed by them as when
mhm,
I haven't done my forgiveness. And this is, like I was saying, well, you said, when you're in a relationship, you have to do your forgiveness process more than once. I mean, we would never
mhm.
think, oh, I've taken the bins out this week and that's it, I'm never going to take them out again. We take the bins out every week, or we do our
Yes.
recycling every week, and but we don't think of it in our internal world. And that's why it's, I call it a practice, because it is something that we need to repeatedly do. Yes, there's so many. In fact, one of the best things that you can do right now to boost your immune system is to do your forgiveness work,
Mhm,
because it lowers your cortisol, it lowers your stress levels, and it increases. Often it can increase your oxytocin and your serotonin, because you have better relationships, and at least you feel
mhm,
better
mhm.
about yourself as well. So, along with gratitude, actually, gratitude is the other
Yes,
practice.
yes. I practice gratitude almost yeah, every day through my journaling or before my journaling, and yeah, I tried forgiving earlier in as the first one of the phase of my meditation, and I noticed that I always got distracted and I focus on anything else. So I recommend doing forgiveness standalone. Do you have any best practice which you do when you forgive?
Yeah, so there's a process in my book called
Mhm,
the Forgiveness Made Easy process.
mhm. Yes.
And I see it like a ritual, like a little mini ritual, and it doesn't have to take
Mhm,
ages. But I think it's better if you actually attend to it as if it's a thing, like
mhm,
a, a yoga practice or an exercise that you would do, or meditation. It's a practice, which means that you somehow, there's a sense that if you give it that kind of importance, that you are saying to yourself, I've done something now, like I've like, it's like I've run 5K, or I've done, it's
mhm,
like I've forgiven, I've worked on forgiving my
mhm,
boss, or I've forgiven my child, or I've forgiven myself, or whatever it is. So there's a couple of things. One is to be aware of what it is that you need to forgive.
mhm,
And so in the book, I invite people to write a list of all the people and things that they need to forgive. And I
mhm,
still do this now. So I did have a very long list, obviously, when
mhm,
I started doing this. And now it's just got a few people on it. And every now and then
mhm.
helicopters go back on it, or, a political, leader or something. I'll do my work, because I don't want to be carrying any ill will
Mhm.
in my body. I want to be free of that.
Yes,
And so
absolutely.
having a forgiveness list is, I think,
Mhm,
probably the first practice. And then taking the time to do it, even if it's just, at the weekend, you just spend half an hour or whatever it is, or even less, to do the work. And if it's something big and significant, like if you were abused as a child, or if you've had some kind of trauma, or it's a very difficult relationship that you have with your partner, or with one of your children, or a parent, then I would recommend that you work with a therapist, a journey therapist, or a forgiveness therapist, or you're just your ordinary therapist, as in not specifically forgiveness therapist, but somebody who can help you with the process of forgiveness. And you can even use the guidelines in my book with another
Yes.
therapist, or even with a friend if you've got someone who you trust. But it's just, if there's significant trauma, I would recommend working with somebody else and a professional if possible.
Okay. Um, in short, can you outline the exact steps, like how forgiveness is actually done?
Yeah, of course. So the whole thing, the little process that I use is like a what would you call it, like an active imagination process. So this means that you sit down and then you imagine having a conversation with the person. So that the very first step is just to start where you are, and in your imagination you bring the person in front of you, and you visualize yourself making eye contact with them. Then the second part is to talk heart to heart. So you really get the chance to say everything you need to say. And what's wonderful about doing this as an imaginary process is that you get the chance to say everything that you need to say to get it off your chest, that the other person maybe wouldn't want to listen to. And sometimes if there's a lot, if this is like a long marriage or relationship or something like that, or a long-term boss employee relationship, then there may be quite a lot of circumstances that you're resenting. So you want to confess the full extent of your resentment and say everything you need to say. And the point of this is to acknowledge that actually there were things that hurt you, or that you are upset by, or that caused you pain. And it's a way of you acknowledging to yourself these things were difficult. And it's kind of, in some ways, you get the chance to judge and blame the other person. So you get
Yes.
to really admit your resentment, the full extent. And funnily enough, when I did this, I give this example about doing the resentment about my mother. I used to resent her for wearing pop socks, and like it's the little things that you also want to include, so that you feel like you've said everything you need to say. And the important thing with my relationship with my mother was I resented her for being ill, which wasn't her fault. She had multiple sclerosis.
Yes.
And I
Ah,
think being able to admit that you resent people for things that aren't really their fault, it's very powerful to just say, actually, yes, because that had a big impact on me and my family, and we had to cope with her illness, and it obviously wasn't her fault, but I
yes.
definitely wanted things to be different from the way they are, that's really what you're acknowledging in this second step, is you're acknowledging the way things are. And then you switch positions. The third step is you switch positions. So you imagine the other person is responding, and you let them speak back to you. So you imagine you switched shoes, you're standing in their position, and they can speak back. Then and that's what's really wonderful about that, is you can hear from their point of view. And sometimes imagining their response, sometimes they would maybe they would ignore you, or they wouldn't say anything kind. But then there's another step after that, step 4, where you go higher, and you look as if you're looking down from a balcony at
Yes,
the
yes.
stage of your life, and you can see, both of you can see from a higher perspective, as if you're very wise. And I often say it's a bit like in the Christmas Carol, when Scrooge is taken up by the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. So
Yes.
it's like you have that kind of perspective where you see, oh, okay. And then what's wonderful about that part is that the other person, you can imagine that they get perspective, that they can see the damage that they've done, but also you can see that probably, maybe your parents were very young when they had you, and they were doing the best they could with what they had, or maybe your boss had been abused by their father, or, it's like somehow we get a bit more of an understanding from taking that higher perspective. And then the 5th step is to look at, and I call it exposing your ego's payoffs and costs, which is really
Yes.
looking at well, what do I get out of holding the resentment? And
Mhm, mhm.
this is a bit like the secret part. This is the real reason why we don't let go or don't want to forgive or don't want to let go
Mhm.
of our resentment
Yes.
is not because it's religious. It's because we get something out of it. We usually are
Yes.
getting some kind of benefit
Yes, a
from
payoff.
holding the resentment. Exactly. And so that's what this step is all about. And there's two whole chapters in the book, so I won't bore you with those.
Mhm,
But there's so it's really looking at two things. One is, what are you getting out of holding the resentment,
mhm, mhm.
but also what does it cost you to hold the resentment? So you're looking at all the downsides of
Yes.
actually holding the resentment is, you know, it's like setting yourself on fire. So you're the one who's in pain. You're the one who's carrying the baggage.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
then the sixth step is to forgive and let go. So
Mhm.
then there's a little some special words that you can say, or your own words that help you feel like you've actually said that you forgive the other person, maybe even ask them for forgiveness if that's relevant. And then
Mhm.
you make some kind of pledge about how you want to go forward, you know, like from now on, how I want to treat you is, or it may be even that there's something that you need to do. It may be you need to have a conversation with that person, or it may be that you need to start legal proceedings against them. So I mean, that the thing about forgiveness is it doesn't mean that you're letting people get away with it. It doesn't mean
Mhm.
it's not the weaker position. Forgiveness means that you are not holding the anger or the ill will. So you
The
could
other,
still
yes.
divorce somebody, but you could
Mhm.
divorce them and kindly and compassionately and consciously end your marriage. But or you could do it full of hatred and resentment and,
Yes.
you know,
Keep the other.
point scoring. Yeah. So then
Yes.
the last step really is just that completion. So that, I
Mhm.
mean, that's a very quick view
Over
of the
you,
process.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
I really love this process, and excellent. I recommend it to try it out and try out forgiveness if you haven't done it yet, and try out the Barbara process, especially if you are not religious, because I think it was a missing piece for me for long.
Yeah.
And I think your book is excellent in this, and
Thank you.
you give more guidance on how to do forgiveness at will. And where can we find you?
Yes, thank you, Zoltan. My website is forgivenessmadeeasy.co.uk, and my
Okay.
book is on Amazon. Just if you just look up "Forgiveness Made Easy" Barbara J. Hunt, then you'll find it. And
Yes, yes. Let me repeat it. Forgiveness made easy .co.uk. So, and your book Forgiveness Made Easy is on Amazon. And thank you, Barbara, for coming today.
you're so welcome. Thank you for inviting me. Thanks,
Thank
Zoltan.
you. Bye.